All right, everyone, welcome back into another NFL DFS video. We are going to be getting into the Week 6 lineup builder here for you guys, where we recap our core plays, talk about some fades. Well, really for this video, it's going to be talking about some leverage spots because, yeah, I think the ownerships are all pretty much correct in terms of players that are high owned, but there are a few pretty solid leverage spots that we're getting. We'll talk about some of my favorite values and stacks. Let's go ahead and get on into this video. All right, guys, so we are going to click on the Week 10 main slate, and what we're going to do is we're going to go straight into the configure groups and stacks. And what I'm going to do right away is we are going to jump on into the core plays just to kind of recap those and tell the lineup builder that I want at least 5 of these core plays that I'm going to put in here into all of my builds, okay? And so that's what we're going to do right now. And so, yeah, just right out the bat, CMC, Puka Nacua, Jonathan Taylor, those are easy clicks. Josh Jacobs is one of my favorite plays as well. Ashton Genty ends up being one of my favorite plays as well on this slate. He feels like he's coming in a little bit under the radar as well. Jackson Smith-Njigba as well is someone that I'm kind of a little bit shocked by his ownership. I feel like he is much more of a core play to me as well for the slate. And then McMillan, just where he's priced, and again, given his matchup as well, he draws a very good matchup against Dallas as well. It could end up being one or the other for him in that matchup, where we're either choosing him or Rico Dowdle. Could also do the same for like Puka Nacua and also this last player, Kyron Williams, who to me, he's coming in a little bit undervalued as well. He's one of my favorite plays as well. But this is kind of the rule I'm setting up, is maybe we even try to get to 6 of those, but then we're really just telling it, we want probably 3 running backs and 3 receivers in that. I want to do 5 to leave it a little bit open for a little bit of wiggle room, but we're going to add this group and save it. So that's kind of what I'm looking at as kind of my core there, the players I want to be going out of my way to target. And so we just go ahead and run that real quick. Just as an FYI, it might take a little bit longer for that to load when you're telling it more stuff, but it will work. It just takes a little bit to load if you guys are a 9-to-5 member using that. Let's just take a peek at what it does. Like Drake May a decent amount, kind of as price tag. I didn't force a stack with a QB and a pass catcher just yet, but it is already naturally pulling in Drake May with Hunter Henry, which I don't mind Hunter Henry on the slate at 4.3. That'll be a spot I talk about in just a second here. But overall, you guys kind of get the roster construction here. I think it ends up working out pretty well. I might demand that it doesn't go off the board like this, like Rachaad White at 6K. Although he's chalk, I don't feel the need to get to him. And so I might also create like a separate rule of saying, give me these freaking running backs that I'm demanding you to do. I think that might end up working out a little bit more because we have like 6 clear-cut running back choices on the slate. Let's just talk about the running back position in general here and talk about some leverage spots there. So we're going to select the position here. We're going to go to the running backs. And I'm fine with Jonathan Taylor and CMC. They're pretty high projected ownership, almost 20% for each of them. That's actually sorted by projected ownership. Again, that makes sense, but to me, that leaves you handicapped with not being able to pay up for Jackson Smith or JSN and Puka Nacua. I think those are 2 viable options there at the receiver position. So for me, I think Rico Dowdle is much more of a core play to me as well. And we're already going to naturally get him a decent amount, but I'm going to bump him up 1 projection point just to ensure the data. I'm telling him I want to be on him. I want to match at least that ownership. Now, a player that I don't want to be on as much of the field, and it's more of a price tag thing, is going to be Rachaad White. He should hold a pretty high floor, but I kind of like some of the other players priced around him a little bit more. Like Junkins, guys, to me at 5.9 is a better play than Rachaad White. And sure, it's only 3% difference, but I'm going to bump up Junkins slightly, and I'm going to bump Rachaad White down a little bit as well, just to tell the data. I'm like, I don't need to be on Rachaad White that much. I still value him as a play, but let's just bump him down too, just to say, yes, he's good. I don't think he's as great as everyone's like listing him out to be. And then Josh Jacobs, I do feel like he's kind of the best play. I'm going to bump him up by 2, but I'm also going to tell the data I want him in maybe 20% of my builds. I want to be overweight on the field. But the one player that to me stands out ownership-wise on the site is Kyron Williams. Coming in at 16% owned, to me, that feels a little bit too low, just given the upside that he has. Or sorry, he's coming in at 11% owned, projected at 16.3 points. I think he has a good chance to end up being more than that. Now, you could, again, end up setting a rule where maybe instead of Puka, you're doing Devontae Adams, where if a lineup includes Devontae Adams, I do not want Kyron Williams. I think Puka is a player that we can trust to have a good game as well. But I want to be on at least 15% of Kyron, maybe even 16% of Kyron. So I'm basically telling the data, be on him over like Rachaad White. Pricing wise, I get it. Like Kyron is higher priced, $300 more though. And he's in a better matchup, safer play. Now, maybe Blake Corum gets more work. We could see that happen. Rachaad White should get a decent amount of usage in the passing game as well. I get that, but to me, that's kind of the lineup path we want to be going with instead. And so I go ahead and process that. Again, we are looking at it a little bit differently now. So It is going much more with a value-based quarterback, which I'm fine with, but definitely get into more of the players I want to get to there. And it's going with more of a fair and balanced approach. I don't mind Spencer Rattler stacked with Juwan Johnson. I think that ends up being a decent stack. Tucker Kraft, I think, is one of the better tight end plays on the slate. And so that ends up being a solid spot for us there as well. So I kind of mentioned Kyron is one of my favorite leverage spots on the slate. Jenkins is not terrible as well. But I think we are getting a few receivers that are coming in a little bit undervalued as well that you could get a decent amount of leverage on in the field as well. So let's just go ahead and pull up the players that are the highest projected own right now. Again, this is still somewhat early. We do see ownership change a little bit more, obviously Sunday morning. But we see the projected ownership right now, guys. So Puka, number one play. I get it. Perfect play. Chris Olave is a safe play. I would say we probably do want to max him out at about 20% ownership. We don't want to be going too crazy with him. Obviously, we can set the global max exposure to like 40% or so as well to ensure we're getting different, maybe 50%. I do tend to like to pull up the projected ownership, pretty high, just so we're not getting too crazy. And then lineup wise as well, we'll just set this as well. $700 left over. But in regards to the receivers that I want to be on more, I think McMillan is solid, but we got news that Chris Godwin is going to be out. So one player that I like a little bit more than the rest of the field currently is Sterling Shepard, priced at 3.8. I think he has a better opportunity to be able to get to like 10 DFS points. Now, I'm not saying I think this projection is wrong, but I'm saying this ends up being a spot where I probably want to be overweight on the field, given the fact that we are trying to pay up for a bunch of these studs. And if we need to do that, then we need to find value, specifically at the receiver spot. So who are some players receiver-wise that we can be on that are like below 4K? He ends up being one of those players. We'll bump him up by 1 point, but we'll also tell it, hey, let's be on him at about 9% ownership. So not too much more, about 3% more than the field, but that could end up being a big difference maker. Another player that I want to be on more than the field, and I'm going to bump him up to 8.5 for his fantasy score, maybe even 9, Isaiah Bond. Isaiah Bond ended up having a fine game last week, guys, but it was really just one big play that he had at the end of the game in garbage time, but he did get the most targets. And I do think him and Gabriel probably do have a little bit of backup connection that they developed throughout, the season thus far. And I think he ends up being a good option. I think I want to be on about double the field, maybe 10%, maybe 9%. We'll go 9%. So nothing too crazy there. But again, gaining some leverage on the field, probably a pass-heavy script for them as well. And we also look at Calvin Ridley in his best matchup of the year thus far, going against the Las Vegas Raiders, who just give up a ton of production to opposing receivers. And so I do think getting to him at about 12 for his projected fantasy score, and then probably being at about 14%. Now, it's a little bit risky, but I can buy into the fact that that was a breakout game for him, but also for Cam Ward to start playing better as well. So those are kind of the three biggest leverage spots, I think, receiver-wise, but we also have another one. And if we sort by value, you guys will be able to see who that is. Tez Johnson, priced at 3.2. Okay, so with Chris Godwin out, we know the Bucs like to run a lot of 11 personnel. It's going to be Miko Buka, it's going to be Sterling Shepard, but Tez Johnson actually had a higher route share than Sterling Shepard last week. So it wouldn't be surprising to see him have a good game. Now, this could end up being a spot where you do create a rule where you're saying, I only got one of those two in my builds, which I'd be fine with. I think that ends up not being a terrible idea. But Tez Johnson, bump him up a little bit, then he already becomes much more appealing. He already is coming in at 7% owned. I don't think we need to get too crazy with it, but 4% owned. Let's just say we get to about 7% ownership for him, gaining a little bit of leverage on the field there as well. And then one last player that's worth calling out, Ryan Flournoy, is a little bit interesting. He has gained 8% ownership, though. People are buying into him. He actually played less snaps than Jalen Tolbert, which I'm not saying do anything with that. I think this ends up being correct here. I probably want to match the field, although, like you're already seeing, some of the other values that we are getting are probably just as good at plays and are coming in a little bit lower owned than him. And so that ends up being just a natural leverage spot as well on the field. From there, I'm kind of just fine matching the field with some of the pass catchers that we are getting there. And then one other position as well, tight end, guys. Tight end, we are getting a bunch of quality spots, I would say, in general. Juwan Johnson actually ended up playing his normal snap share last week. A lot of people, including myself, were worried what his snaps would be in that game. With both of the back end tight ends being back, and his role didn't really change too much, although I would say his upside probably changed a little bit. So let's just go and sort it by salary, guys. I think it's a little bit easier to break it down that way. Trey McBride, Jake Ferguson, I'm perfectly fine with those two. Brock Bowers is out. We can exit him out naturally. And that might be something I add into the two. I think that actually could be useful where if a player's listed out, he's already listed out like this. But I do like Tucker Kraft in this matchup going against the Cincinnati Bengals. Actually one of the better spots there as well. So Like, we could create a rule where every lineup we want one of Josh Jacobs or Tucker Kraft. It kind of feels like it could be a Josh Jacobs game. Maybe it's a Tucker Kraft game. Or maybe Romeo Doubs just goes off for 3 touchdowns again. I doubt that, but it's just such a good spot there for them. And them coming in off of the bye week is appealing to me. The issue with Tucker Kraft is you also have someone like Hunter Henry, who is also in a very good spot there, guys. I'm going to bump him up 1 to 11 for his projected fantasy points. Darren Waller draws a much more difficult matchup on the slate. I do think we want to max his ownership at about 5%. That could end up being a mistake because he's probably going to play more of the slot role. And we know Jonnu Smith ended up being kind of a stud last year for the Dolphins in that similar role. But it does worry me a little bit in that matchup. Jake Tungus as well. I do like a decent amount, maybe 7% for him. They're still pretty banged up there for the Niners, and he looked good. I don't think his production was really a mistake, although some people might read into that. And then really, to me, one of the best spots that we can get to on the slate is Gunnar Helm. Gunnar Helm is coming in at less than 1% projected ownership, although he was the tight end 1 for the Tennessee Titans last week, guys. He was someone that, to me, throughout the preseason, was someone I was keeping an eye on, that when he finally had a game in which he broke out or was kind of the tight end 1 there, I was going to be on him a decent amount. So I'm actually going to bump him up a decent amount, telling the data I want to be on Gunnar Helm a bunch, okay? Let's just do that. And so we're going to bump him up to 10% projected min ownership. We don't need to go crazy with it. We're going to gain leverage on the field by doing that. Let's just put him at about 20% projected ownership there from there. DST wise, if you aren't familiar, guys, it is a base of like 5 for everyone. Obviously, you can go in and change this. That'll be something I probably update now that the season is fully into it. I probably will here shortly. But the DST that I like the most is actually going to be the Titans DST. And so let's just kind of balance these out a little bit more. So we'll do 1, 2, 3, and then Titans DST at 5. I think that ends up being one of my favorite values there. So we want to be getting to them the most, just because the Raiders have struggled. And although I do like Jacoby Myers, I do like Ashton Genty a decent amount as well. The Titans DST just, Geno Smith has looked terrible, so I think that ends up being the spot that we want to get to. This ends up being more random. That's kind of the point of how I have that set up. But again, that's really up for you guys to tell the data which DST you want to be on there. But let's just go ahead and run this again, and you guys will be able to see kind of what we're looking at more so now on this slate. Well, we do need to talk about stacks. Let's do stacks first real quick, and then we'll run it here. So Matthew Stafford, I do think if we're playing Matthew Stafford, we do want to get to at least one of Adams, obviously, Puka Nacua. It's pretty much as simple as that. That's an easy stack. He is one of the better plays on the slate, that being Matthew Stafford. Bryce Young as well, to me, pretty simple, guys. If we're playing Bryce Young, we want exactly, and I think it's just McMillan. I really like McMillan on the slate. He ends up obviously looking like a really good play. Let's do that. Add group. Jordan Love is also in a pretty good spot here, guys. So let's go ahead and get Jordan Love in there in a stack. And this is one where it kind of ends up being tough to tell you guys what to do. So we're going to do exactly 2 of, and then we're going to do Kraft, who's obviously in a good spot. Matthew Golden, who really, he still feels like he's due for a breakout game. And then we still have Romeo Doubs at a pretty soft price tag as well. And so I like this approach there. We're not going too crazy with it, but we are, specifically telling it what to do there. So at least 2 of those players in a build with Jordan Love as the quarterback. And then we still are getting Justin Herbert in a spot where I think it's going to be much more of a pass-heavy script, and we can do the exact same thing with him. We're saying we want at least 2 of, and actually I think we could maybe play one of the running backs with him, although let's not do that because I do think Ladd McConkey is going to be used much more in short yardage situations with Amari and Hampton being out. That could actually be their run game, is just them getting the football to Ladd McConkey instead. We'll still have Johnson in a pretty fine spot as well. And then I will toss in Gadsden in there as well. Tyler Conklin really struggled last week, and I think you could just see Gadsden end up getting a little bit more work, and that's just kind of a way to get unique there as well. So we'll add that group in there as well. Could toss in Spencer Rather with Chris Olave. The thing with this is I don't typically like to do this too much because the data is already naturally doing that when we are telling it stack a quarterback with a pass catcher. And so if you like a quarterback, let's say Jordan Love, you just bump up his fantasy projections. Bryce Young, you just bump up his fantasy projections a little bit there as well to tell the data, I want to be on these guys a little bit more than the field. And then just real quickly, I do think Cam Ward, we do want to bump up his projection a little bit. Again, he's looked bad, let's face it, but he is going against an easy matchup in the Raiders. I don't think we need to go crazy with him. Like, no one's really on him. But let's be on him about 5 to 10%. Maybe ends up breaking out, and maybe that stack with Calvin Ridley ends up being pretty worthwhile there for us. All right, so let's take a peek at this. So I ended up doing 20 lineups, guys, and let's just see. So total projected ownership is relatively high for most of these lineups, as we wanted. You know, we don't have to get too crazy. We can get leverage in some interesting spots here and there. Hunter Henry is someone that we're getting to a decent amount here. Let's just see here. The highest owned is Josh Jacobs. I like that. Okay, again, I think that's the best route in which we can get different from the field. I actually might be a little bit lower on Christian McCaffrey than this. I think we want to just match the field with those ownerships. Amika Ibuka, I think that's a little bit too high as well. I'm probably going to reduce that a decent amount there. And then Puka Nacua, I want to be on more than this. But you guys kind of get the general sense of what we're looking at here in terms of lineups, in terms of GPP lineups. So Drake May, and then we get Jonathan Taylor, Junkins. I think that ends up being fine with Kyron Williams in the flex. Gunnar Helm, fine with that. We get Diggs. I don't know if necessarily we want to get to Diggs that much, but he is pretty cheap, and he obviously is coming in off of a good game. But that's the point with Diggs. I think he's coming in off of a high emotion game. This is kind of the natural letdown spot for him. And so I think I would rather pay down there with Diggs and then just go up to Hunter Henry in that specific lineup, which is kind of what it did here. This lineup is actually not terrible. Again, I don't need to be on Javonte Williams that much. I'd rather be on Kyron, who we're already on there, I guess. Not a terrible lineup here, though. Sterling Shepard, Calvin Ridley, Puka, pretty high floor there. Daniel Jones. Let's see. We're getting to Pittman. I'm okay with that. Not a terrible spot for them. They get a matchup where they have given up a lot of production to opposing receivers, a very high reception total, so that's fine. Rico, Kyron, Ashton Genty, pretty happy with that. Need more Gunnar Helm in my life here, guys. Like, what's going on here? One lineup with Gunnar Helm. I think I'll raise his min projected ownership a little bit there. There's another Gunnar Helm. And I should break this down by position, I think, here. Maybe a little horizontal position tool so we can see that as well. But overall, pretty happy. Obviously, a little bit more of the kinks to work out there, but works out pretty well. We're able to get the stacks that we wanted as well. Yeah, definitely need more Puka. Again, I think Puka is a priority over CMC and Jonathan Taylor. So I'll just be something I update in there on my end. And I'll just show you guys what I mean by that. So real quick, we'll do that. So receiver wise, Puka, let's just say I want to be on him 23%, maybe a little bit overweight on the field. Let's go back to the running backs here, guys. So Jonathan Taylor, CMC, we'll say we want them 17% for JT and maybe 19% for CMC, but let's cap it at 30% for each. Okay, we do not need to go crazy with that. And let's see here as well. So like Javonte Williams, 15%. Will be a little bit lower on the field than him. Derrick Henry, 5%. Rashad White, again, maybe 12% for him. I'm fine with those two plays. I like those two plays. I would just rather get my exposure elsewhere. So like Rico Dowdle, yeah, let's bump this up to 25%. Be overweight on him on the field. Kyron Williams, can even bump this up a little bit more as well. So you guys see how I'm trying to get different. And let's just do receivers as well. So the core plays, I definitely want to be on more. So like JSN, I'll bump him up one more as well. We're going to tell the data. Let's get to him. 22% of the builds. Tedero McMillan, we'll bump him up to, let's say, 18% as well. Again, we're telling the data. We want to be on him as a play compared to some of the other options that are out there. But that's going to do it for this video, guys. Kind of a fun, quick, easy video for you guys breaking down week 6. Make sure to like the video before you guys leave. Subscribe to the channel as well. If you guys would like access to any of those tools that you saw throughout this video, you guys get access to the 9-to-5 lineup builder, the 9-to-5 cheat sheet, all the fantasy golf tools as well, all the prop tools, all for a low monthly cost of $10 a month. You also get access to the featured write-up for that slate as well. That's a member exclusive. Typically, it is somewhat recapping my thoughts from this video and then just putting in a more concrete, easy to absorb format for you guys. But as you guys know, news and notes are always changing, and so that's going to be something that always gets updated. So check it out, guys. All this for a low monthly cost of $10 a month. Write-up typically comes out on Saturday nights or Sunday mornings early, depending on the amount of news that we have. But that's going to do it for this video, guys. Appreciate you being here. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. Again, jump on into 9to5sports.com, get access to all those tools for a low monthly cost of $10 a month. Use the promo code KEEPCASHING, though, to get 20% off your first month. That's going to do it for this video, guys. Appreciate you being here. Good luck, and as always, let's keep cashing.